There we go. I like that question. The comment. Okay, let's get going, shall we? I'm sorry I'm late. Here we go. Are you ready? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Age of television.
Stand by for the Sports Huddle, next on WEEI. Any reproduction during this program without the express consent of the Sports Huddle is prohibited.
Autographed pictures of Westy Jr. looking disappointed since Santa brought him electric trains instead of the Sports Huddle sweatshirt he wanted so badly will soon be available with the purchase of each and every new subscription to Bewildered, the official magazine of the now tough Eddie Casco.
Tonight's mystery sporting term was, Jackaman didn't have a chance when Hodge deflected Esposito's slap shot off his head and into the net. Since no caller got it, $50 will be removed from the giant jackpot and donated to the committee to help teach Randy Vitaha how to curse and swear.
In tonight's performance of the Sports Huddle, the part of Garfield Smith's dexterity was played by a pretzel soaked in warm water overnight.
The formation of a new advertising agency by Roy Jefferson, Chris Rogers, Dale Mitchell, Jack Evans, Gabby Hartnett, Bob Hayes, and Trigger Burke and Mike Epstein will be known as Roy Rogers, Dale Evans, Gabby Hayes, Trigger, and Epstein.
The John Mazer, Upton Bell, Billy Sullivan Troika was adopted from last summer's Yaz, Reggie, and Billy Canigliaro forest, and only the names have been changed to confuse the innocent.
Copies of the new hit record of Yes, Mr. Sullivan, Whatever You Want, sung by the Patriots Board of Directors, will be given away free.
Okay, so
with the purchase of
that's even older than me. That's from 1971. This is the Sports Huddle on WEEI from 1971. That's Eddie, Mark, and Jim. Mark Whitkin, Jim McCarthy, Eddie Andelman. Eddie passed away, I think, yesterday. He was 88 or 89 years old. He created sports talk radio. I've never been. I absolutely would not be as into radio as I am if it wasn't for Eddie Andelman. He was just great. He was great. And what I played is dated. So if you're under 50, you're probably like wondering what is going on. The names don't make any sense. Probably, although Upton Bell. But the Sports Huddle was a very irreverent sports show on Sunday nights. And sometimes they'd talk sports. Sometimes they didn't feel like talking sports. Sometimes they'd fight amongst themselves. Sometimes they did whatever the hell they want. We had somebody on Twitter today say sometimes when they didn't want to talk about sports, Eddie said, call in where they're taking names that begin with P. Something just like that. It was much like Eddie later had a show called Anything Goes and WHDH where he would just talk. There was a part of it with just favorite midnight snacks. It didn't matter, but he do a lot of, obviously he made sports talk radio, not caring what people thought about him. It was incredible. I worked with him at the Boston Herald. He did a show with us, a streaming show. He was still he was so funny. He was up to mischief constantly. The World Cup was happening. He called the Ghana team somehow, or was talking to some guys, and they loved him, but he did whatever the hell he wanted. He was not politically correct. He was, being in a room with the Eddie Andelman and talking to him was one hell of an honor. And it's a little weird. Like, should I be in a microphone while this guy's in a microphone? He was just so good and so entertaining. And the greatest. He was the greatest sports talk radio guy. I mean, I would say that since then, now the mantle's been passed. Certainly, Glenn Ordway, Jerry Kirk, and John, and probably for sports talk would probably end it about there. But he was just fantastic. So let me just play just a couple of things. Here's Eddie Andelman going back and forth with Jim McCarthy. Now remember, these guys aren't really radio guys. They were guys who I think were spotted just having an argument at a diner or something. These are friends. And they never had radio discipline. They never had radio voices. That's what made them awesome. And we're going to talk to Kirk Minihane and Bill Speros about that And it especially like equates to Minihane because Kirk has kind of had this same rise in radio where he wasn't a radio guy. He just went in there and started talking. And, once in a while, a talent like that sneaks through, like Eddie's or Kirk's, and you get just some great, great stuff. Here's Eddie Andelman going back and forth with Jim McCarthy. This is also 1972, so this is stuff before. I wasn't even around for this, but I love it.
That baseball compares to football with something going on when you can see the pitchers in the bullpen playing with the girls in the seats. You can see the outfielders standing with their arms folded looking at the skirts. You're trying to tell me that baseball is an action game?
Let me rewind this a little bit because
Are you going to tell me that baseball compares to football with something going on when you can see the pitchers in the bullpen playing with the girls in the seats? You can see the outfielders standing with their arms folded looking at the skirts. You're trying to tell me that baseball is an action game?
I know why you don't like baseball anymore, because it's a thinking man's game. In football, there's all those experts, they're all explaining everything. But in baseball, you can sit there, and every single fan knows 95% as much as the smartest manager that ever lived. Knows the rules.
You call that a thinking man's game?
Of course it is. How can you think watching
a little kid, a 2-year-old kid could manage a baseball team. A 2-year-old kid. He can tell him what to do. He can watch the pitching. When the pitcher gets knocked out of the box, he brings in a reliever. That's a thinking man's game. Well, it's your type of thinking man's game. One thing about football, even at the end of a play, you can watch the defense line up. You can watch the offense get ready. You're thinking for the quarterback the whole time. You're thinking for the defensive captain. You're thinking the whole time. Baseball is a thinking man's game. It's your type of thinking man's game. No brains.
No, and football, of course, with the big gorillas going to all the football academies, and they go out there and say, kill, and they come out there, and that's a real thinking man's game.
I don't know what this is.
There isn't one colorful ball player in the league except Vida Blue, and he held out, and they should have left him out for the whole year.
You are, without question, the biggest hypocrite I've ever met in my life.
I don't know why that keeps happening. Maybe some kind of watermark.
You're next on the sports huddle.
Jimmy,
Yes.
tell me why you agree with Phil.
Because I don't think any guy 21 years old, 22, that's been 1 year in the league deserves $92,500 a year for 1 year's performance.
Jim likes to get a lot of fun. Jim likes to play guard, so he can set everybody's salary.
I just said, here's 50 grand. Take it or leave it.
Oh, don't you think for the guy the drawing card now determines his pay also?
Well, I think it's got a little bit to do with it. Yeah, wait a second. Not to raise his salary from 15 grand to 92.5 over one season.
Do you think that Mr. Philly cheated when he signed the $15,000 contract?
No, because that's what they say in all rookies for $15,000. Baloney. Wait a second. In about 1 minute, you're going to be laying flat on the floor with a microphone around your head.
I know, and I'm going to be crying because you're going to be dead.
Maybe that's it. I'm not sure. It says that there's supposed to be more of this stuff. Okay, maybe that's it. That's great. I mean, imagine that 1971, hearing this weird studio violence, while other shows are talking about X's and O's and stolen bases, and these guys are more societal. That's why I always thought, let me get to the interviews, and we'll get back to me in a bit. Oh man, but there's one thing before we get to the interviews. Here's Eddie Andelman in 1972. I'm sorry, this stuff is all what's on YouTube. This is him calling Forest Lawn Cemetery, asking if baseball is dead.
We're calling probably one of the world's most famous funeral establishments, and that, of course, is Forest Lawn in California.
Mr. Nixon, may I help you?
Mr. Nixon? Good evening, Mr. Nixon. My name is Eddie Andelman, and this is a show called The Sports Huddle. The topic of discussion tonight is baseball dead?
It doesn't seem to be out here.
Right. Are you a baseball fan by some chance, Mr. Nixon? You follow the Angels?
I'm 15 minutes from Dodgers, and I go there.
Right, by the way, Eddie can always roll with anything, and this guy's just rolling with them. Notice that the guy's name is Nixon in 1972.
Every time I get a chance.
Right. Now, what is the talk around Forest Lawn as far as baseball goes? We know you're the superintendent. Now, what about some of the other people, so to speak?
Well, we have a lot of baseball fans here.
Would you live or were a lot of baseball fans?
Pardon?
Are you saying, in other words, there's a lot of baseball fans around there? What you mean, Mr. Nixon, is that working there presently, or occupants, so to speak, tenants of your place?
No, they work here.
That work here. I see. Right. Are there any famous names in the world of baseball buried at Forest Lawn?
Not to my knowledge.
Any famous sports figures?
Not to my knowledge.
I see. Well, let me ask you this too. Do you have a group outing of, like, say, grave diggers or mourners or anything that go out to the ball game together since you're so close to Dodger Stadium? I know, like in New York, they've had bat days. In Boston, they've had cap days. In Cleveland, they've had nuns days. Is there anything that you have planned, sort of, out, diggers days?
No, we don't.
You don't. Well, Mr. Nixon, I certainly want to thank you very much, and I have to ask you this question. You are not, by some chance, related to the President of the United States?
No, I'm not. If I would, I'd be right here.
Here we go. All right. So with that, let's bring in Bill Speros. You know Bill Speros probably first from, he had a blog in the early 2000s. But he was with Boston.com, and then he was with the Herald while I was there, and you knew him back then as Obnoxious Boston Guy. Now he is doing Bill is into he is doing online gambling stuff. I don't even know how to say it. I'm so not into the world of online gambling, but he is so he's done what you do to stay where is it? Speros, where are you? To stay employed, which is smart. Bill Speros, there he is. Bill Speros profile. There you go. Senior betting prediction market analyst at Bookies and at RotoWire. Seen him in the Herald, ABC, OBF, real OBF. That was Obnoxious Boston fan. He's a local guy. He knows his stuff. He's an absolute pleasure to talk. Whoa, sorry, Eddie. Talk to, and let's go down here to Bill Speros. Where is Bill? Hang on. Here we go. All right, Bill Speros. It's been a while since we've talked, I guess, in person here, but both of us, I certainly think can say that without Eddie Andelman, maybe we wouldn't have been in this realm at all. What does this mean? What does today mean, the passing of Eddie Andelman, for sports radio, and what should people know who missed it?
Well, the Sports Huddle was appointment radio when there was such a thing. It might have been the last appointment radio in Boston, actually, because even in the 70s and 80s, you wanted to tune in AM 850 WHDH to listen to those guys, Eddie, Mark, and Jim. I was maybe 11 and 12 when I started listening to them. I grew up in Arlington. I was like around 1977, 1978. That's when I really, got into sports. I was about maybe 10 or 11. And, I'd listen to these guys, and they were so different than everything else in media at the time that they actually would question the owners of the teams and question the management of the teams. Of course, my father had a. When I was a kid, I always thought Eddie Casco's middle name began with an F, and so being cynical about that stuff, it was my dad, one of many who lived and died without ever seeing the Red Sox win a World Series.
Yeah.
So I always had that. Was always a part of me, oh, they're always going to blow it. They're always going to blow it. But
Yes.
When I listened to Eddie, Mark, and Jim, they took it to a whole new level. They got me thinking about, owners and how they're not spending money. And I still remember every single song they ever did. Jeremy Jacobs, we thank you for screwing up the team. And, they called Don Zimmer the Chiang Kai-shek, because he didn't want his name on the radio, so they called him Chiang Kai-shek. And they would refer to WBZ because, I guess they had left there. That was a little before my time, but they called it Wyoming Blasting and Zoning. So what, and I wrote the OBF column for the Herald for 9 years, and before that I was blogging on Boston.com. Now that brand came out of something entirely different in my life down here in Florida, but how I wrote, how I thought, how I posted, how that kind of fan-centric, questioning, cynical attitude was probably inherent, but it was certainly fostered and grown by listening to Eddie and Mark and Jim on the Sports Huddle. That's where I really got experiencing the Red Sox losing Game 7 of the 1975 World Series as a 10-year-old boy in the bleachers with my mom.
Yeah.
And then watching them blow it in 77 and 78. Those were my formative years. Seeing Bobby Orr leave the Bruins. When the Red Sox when the Bruins traded Phil Esposito, the principal at my school announced it over the PA system. That's what a big deal that was.
Wow.
So I was growing up in this time. The Patriots, that was when the Patriots got screwed on roughing the passer. So it was all these. Of course, the Celtics always won, but it was all these negative, sport traumatic things that were happening. And then I'd listen to a guy like Eddie Andelman, and he would say, well, maybe if the Yankees weren't so cheap, maybe if Billy Sullivan wasn't such a screw up, maybe if the Jacobs family, spent more money on the players, maybe if Don Zimmer wasn't, such an inept fool. And it really got me thinking, it wasn't always just the players. Like those guys, I think really help fans understand the business of sports before the business of sports was a thing. Now there's entire media ecosystems built upon the business of sports. But these guys were talking about it 50 years ago. And they really opened people's eyes up to the money involved and the personalities involved and all the kind of stuff that now everybody loves to latch on to.
Yeah.
They were, at least in my years, they were the first people I ever heard talk about it. So for me, it wasn't just that Eddie was immensely popular and talented and he was everywhere. I remember when he was on Channel 7 and, he was everywhere and he was a big guy and a big personality. But it was, now I look back at it 50 years later and it's the stuff they were talking about was so revolutionary at the time. And now it's all taken for granted. Everything those guys did is like just par for the course now. And back then it was like nobody did it.
Yeah, and Bill, I think that's part of the charm of the show. First of all, there was sharp elbows. I mean, they weren't swearing, but this was a sexualized and a show that, they would go places and be mean to each other sometimes. These guys talked like guys at a diner, which is precisely what they were, I think, at one time. And I also think that they had this disdain for stodgy radio with radio voices and, it was proper, proper broadcast. And like there were guys who took over a studio and did whatever the hell they wanted. The audacity to do that, to have a parody song with Gene Yockey singing "It's Been a Hard Day's Night." Like they were so irreverent. I don't know where they got the self-confidence, but it was a marvel to hear, and it was only there.
Yeah. And it's like, everything, the best and worst of what you might hear on EEI. Of course, Eddie was on there for years, and Kirk will talk all about that, I'm sure. But you the stuff that you hear now, they sort of did it all.
Yeah.
And they did it at a time where, maybe it wasn't, I'm not a radio guy, so maybe being on at 7 o'clock on Sunday night didn't really care. The radio station didn't care. But they were really, really like the only place to get that. Pre-social media, pre-everything, pre-internet, and they were the only place where you could, like, if you were a fan and you were really pissed, and that was like, or upset over the state of things, that was the only place where you had an outlet to listen to, where you weren't alone. And that, you'd hear people call the show, and I would be like, oh yeah, that guy's right. You didn't know that, you didn't realize that there were other people out there that kind of felt the same way as you did.
Yeah.
And they definitely brought it out. But it is funny, the more I think about, like, I can just remember all the stuff they did, all the, like, the jingles I always thought were hilarious. Zaire, your favorite store, African Nation, and just all that stuff. But Chiang Kai-shek was my favorite. I thought that was like so funny because it was always deadpan, you know. One thing I loved about Eddie was, and I kind of fastened myself after him, you know, his funniest stuff was like, he was obviously a big over the top guy, but his funniest stuff was when he was like just deadpanning it. He would let whatever the absurdity of the moment kind of be
Right.
on its own.
Oh yeah, like I was just thinking, like how much fun would he have with all these Scotsmen in Boston? He would have.
Oh yeah. Oh, he would have a kilt and a bagpipe,
He'd be right there with them.
and he would have been like leading them into the stadium, and he would have tried to bring in like a barrel of Scotch whiskey into Fenway Park, you know, like because John Henry, you know, somebody joked on Twitter last night or X that Henry was charging $500 a beer last night because oh no, he would have like got like an old oaken barrel of like the best Scotch whiskey and had it on tap outside the ballpark, and there's no doubt he would have worn a kilt. I think that would have been like his crowning moment, like to wear a kilt and maybe throw an axe or do the bagpipe thing. You
Yeah.
know, 100%.
You know, another thing, and I think that all of the best people in radio, it's they're not afraid to take chances, and it's the kind of thing that gets them in trouble. And you saw like Kirk and Callahan, you would get in trouble. They took chances. Certainly Stern took a bunch of chances. But like I'm reading this, there's a Twitter reply to I posted about Eddie from this guy. I don't know who he is. He says Eddie did a show once on favorite P words on WHDH. Masterclass on how to do a show on a slow sports week. And that was another thing. Another Eddie Power is just totally break format and talk about whatever the hell he wanted to.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
It's just,
And you hear a lot of that, and now on some shows. And you know, I never met the man. I didn't know much about him except for you know experiencing him as a listener, which was probably you know good in a way. Again, it's just someone who literally grew up listening to that show. It everything he did, like you said, breaking format, and I
yeah.
carried that over into my writing and
Yep.
into you know, when I would do radio hits or still do radio hits once in a while, you know, obviously more gambling focused now, but I still carry that and throw kind of the outside, um, you know, like you said, off topic thing, you know, mainly to get a laugh or to,
Yeah.
you know, keep something interesting. You know, Eddie definitely wanted to leave him laughing for sure. I mean, he always had a smile on his face. Every picture I think I ever seen of
Yep.
him, he had that big smile. Obviously, a big guy, a big face. You know, one of these kind of personas that sort of matched his body in a way. You know, and he was. I mean, the guy was a landmark. He was a fixture.
Yeah.
Certainly for folks of a certain age. And you know, if you weren't around, obviously, you know, you didn't know what it was like. But in his time, you know, he was as omnipresent as Bob Lobel or Mike Lynch
Yep.
or John Dennis or you know, Ned Martin or any of these people. I mean, he was as important part of that ecosystem, you know, as you know, again, even as the columnists, you know, a Tim Horgan or a Lee Montville. I mean, Eddie had as much sway as those guys did in a lot of ways. Certainly with the public, you
Yes.
know, maybe not so much with the fan, but he certainly held sway with the public, 100%.
Yes. Absolutely. So let me ask you before we part ways, Bill Speros. You know, your writing was when we had you at the Herald, and you know your other stuff that you've done previously was always it's opinionated writing, it's sharp writing, it's you are self confident in writing, in your writing, and if you're going to do that, you can't be afraid of people hating you. You have to know that there are going to be people who think you're an a-hole out there. And you know there were a lot of people who thought Eddie was because his opinions, and he'd hang up on the Yankees fans, or if you said something wrong, like I think if you said I don't know, you got hung up on, or if you said what do you think, he like did that.
Oh, he would blow up the collars.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Did that part of Eddie's persona inspire you to look at that and say, wow, like people somebody hates me the same way they hate Eddie. This is great.
I think everybody, if you're sharing your opinion, and and when I was at the Herald and blogging at Boston.com, I mean, I was a sports editor for 25 years before I did any of that. So I had a traditional career in newspaper sports journalism as an editor for almost 3 decades. But when I started doing that other stuff, yeah, I mean, it was kind of fun.
Yes.
It was kind of fun after being an editor for so long to actually, when you're an editor, you're a boss. Your job is to put the paper out, deal with everybody, edit stories, assign stories, deal with breaking news. It was very a functional journalism thing. And then I got to express my opinion, and it was great. Now I get to write about gambling, which I think is almost better. But
Oh, by
yeah,
the
I
way,
mean, I was.
something that I'm sure Eddie consumed.
Oh, and again, I mean, think about this. Imagine, I mean, to answer your question, yes, I'm sure that being a fan of Eddie and the other guys too, because they were a lot more caustic than he was. I felt like it was an okay thing to do because I had seen him and frankly others too. I mean, I read, growing up in Boston at that time and wanting to be in journalism, it's like I got to read the best writers ever. And I got to listen to like this great sports talk show. I mean, I was so blessed. And it's helped me in my career. I mean, I read Lee Montville every day. I read Tim Horgan every day. I read Bob Ryan every day. I read Peter Gammons and Dan. It was a beat writer and columnist every day. So it was like I read all these great reporters and writers. And my first job was delivering the Herald, and my second job was delivering the Globe in Arlington. So this is all I ever wanted to do. And I think, for this part of my career, I think Eddie's influence was immense.
Yeah.
And from what I was told, I think he enjoyed my writing. I was told that by some folks at the paper, which was nice. That was very flattering. And as far as the gambling goes now, I think Eddie would be losing his mind with the sports books, with legalized gambling in the Commonwealth. I mean, good Lord. I don't know what he would have done with that.
That's Bill Speros. Thank you, Bill. Before we get to Kirk, I want to just play this. This is Eddie later in late 80s at Fenway Park doing this is from TV. And this is just him saying stuff that most people in the TV station would never say.
The basic foundation of nourishment of all sports fans is our friend the hot dog. And only over at Fenway Park could they mess up a one-car funeral. To begin with, after sitting in water for hours upon end, unless a Fenway Frank is purchased before the second inning, they become waterlogged and end up a shrinking senior citizen of the delicatessen world, nurtured by ever-expanding amoeba. The sometimes week-old rolls are steamed to the point they resemble a snack right out of the Poseidon Adventure. As for condiments, usually at Fenway Park they serve sissy yellow-type mustards, usually in a handy little envelope that's hard to open unless you happen to bring a pair of scissors, leading ultimately to difficulties in opening it up and getting the mustard on the Franks not all over you. Is there chili available? No. Is there cheese or onions available? Certainly not.
That did change.
Is there relish or sauerkraut available? No. But alas, like most of you, I am addicted. For even Julia Childs and the great Chef Boyardee would have to admit, nothing tastes as great as a hot dog at the old ballpark.
Fenway Franks!
So there you go. They later, by the way, rectified that. I don't even know if it's still the same way, but they have vats of chopped onions and great mustards available. At least they did 20 years ago when I was looking. Okay. Without further ado, let's go. I'm sorry that I said without further ado. I'll always regret that. I can tell you that. Let's go to, where is Kirk? Here we go. Kirk Minihane. You know him from the Kirk Minihane Show, KMS, and all sorts of Barstool. The Case, which is his Barstool True Crimes series, and Barstool stuff like Barstool Trivia and a whole bunch of other things. He's all over the place. So I think it needs no interruption. Most famous for being my high school classmate. All right, Kirk Minihane. What a day, man! You knew the end was going to be fairly soon. Eddie was way up there, almost 90 years old. But Eddie Andelman, I think probably you, like me, he's somebody I listened to with my dad. He began it all. So sports talk radio, attitude radio, ballsy radio. What did this guy mean?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it was more comedic in style, certainly, and it was different. I didn't know what sports talk radio was. I knew it wasn't a daily thing. So every Sunday night, I remember a lot driving back from the Cape. My dad's parents were down the Cape, so Sunday nights would drive back, and that was sort of how the ride. You'd listen to it. It was the three guys, Eddie, Mark, and Jim, and they would just goof around and like just say crazy stuff. I remember I was thinking of this not long ago. What's his name? Lauren Green, the actor from Bonanza, when he died, when he was dying. Do you remember this?
No.
Eddie was calling the hospital to try and get him on the phone. And I was like, as a kid, I was like, I was titillated by it, but I was like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, why is he, and he would say things back then that like, you just couldn't say, like,
Yeah.
Remember one time he would just be like, yeah, if you put a bag over Martina and never throw his head, maybe you could have sex with her. Just like, he would just say it. And like, stuff about Carl Lewis and just weird stuff. But like, the show was funny. They made fun of the nationally syndicated show that was on after theirs. It was this really boring guy who was on, and they would make fun of him. Like at the end, they had this song playing at the end with all this stuff and all these fake sponsors. It was just wild. Like there's really nothing to compare it to. I mean, we can get into how time, I think, caught up with him. But like at the time, for everybody, I saw Portnoy tweeting about it earlier. Like for guys our age, say, really, I think like late 40s plus, like Eddie was the first sports talk like voice you ever heard in your life, ever. There's no question about it.
And kind of like you, not a radio guy, like wasn't a big voiced guy. They weren't
no.
Like these were dudes who had no business being on the radio, who went in directions that a program director would have a big problem with at any time. They did whatever the F they wanted to, just unheard of at the time.
Yeah, they were on Sunday nights, right? So I think it didn't really matter. I'm guessing at first they probably bought time, and then it kind of blew up. But that was an adult. I did wonder about that too. Like, did they have a weekend? Maybe not. But I think one of them, Mark and Jim, one was a lawyer and one was an insurance agent.
Yeah.
And Eddie was in real estate, obviously, and all the the connections with the Patriots and with the parking lots, and obviously with the racetracks. And but yeah, like there was no, like, Eddie was the lead personality, but there wasn't like a one, whatever you call, take in, take out, breaks, hit the post, none of that crap. There was no, they occasionally have interviews, but they have a lot of writers come in. And then Eddie obviously branched into EI later on and became a daily personality and a huge one. Like, I think Glenn and Eddie and Jerry and John, I think, are probably, in sports talk radio wise, and I think Eddie and Glenn above those two are kind of Eddie, I think, is obviously the godfather of it. So, yeah.
And I think that part of the brilliance of Eddie, and same with Glenn too, is that there could be nothing going on in the news and nothing but a paperclip in the studio, and they could make a conversation about it.
Yeah. And, Eddie, I remember as a kid, it would drive me nuts because I was very, ironically, a big sports fan as a kid, very stat oriented. And Eddie would just make something up, and I'd be like, well, that's not true. And like later on, I think the internet hurt Eddie. I've said this before, where like now callers would say, well, Eddie, I'm looking at it. It's not true.
Yeah.
Because Eddie would be like, I remember he'd be like, it's a well-known fact that Danny Ainge is way better on the road statistically than at home. And then somebody would call me like, well, the numbers aren't true. And he'd be like, whatever. He'd just say something. But I mean, a tremendous charity guy, obviously, too.
Yeah.
Just, the hot dog safari and all the work he did with cystic fibrosis. It didn't end well for him in radio. I think he was bitter about it as he got older, but what a crazy, a crazy run. The mold was broken. Like zero chance something like that could be on the radio today, which is a shame.
Well, and also like another thing, before we get to the EI days, doing stuff like he wouldn't talk about hockey because he didn't like it. He would hang up on the Yankee fans. He had, if you asked certain questions, if you said, "What do you think?" you get blown up off the air. Like audacity. I'd never had many listeners when I was doing AM radio, so I would never just blow somebody up. I was like, please. But and also talking about wrestling, Roddy Piper and stuff, like, what is even that? That's so ballsy to do, but it was legendary stuff.
Yeah, he promoted wrestling events at Sullivan Stadium. It's funny, when the last time the year I was on the radio, or the last time the Bruins made a run the playoffs, I didn't even think of this. Like, I told Jerry, my old partner, I was like, we don't care about hockey. It's insulting to the audience. We never discussed the Bruins during the Stanley Cup run. They went all the way to the Stanley Cup finals. I never thought about that. You're right. Like Eddie was like, no, I don't want to talk about it. It's boring. And he's right. It was boring radio. It's fun to watch, but it's boring radio. He, cared about stuff that he cared about, and then, he would correct. Like he would, not be, he liked to fight, and argue, but in a passionate way, but also in a fun way. But he would take it, I think, I didn't know Eddie very well at all, but some people said he could be sensitive, but, I think he was at his best with Mark and Jim, though. I just do. Like, I think that was his best setting. I mean, that was the best. Three guys who just talked about whatever they wanted to talk about. There was no Sunday night's great time. There's no pressure. And three guys could just bullshit about any topic they wanted to talk about for 3 hours if they wanted to.
Yeah. And they didn't know anything about radio, which helped, which was huge.
Nothing. Huge advantage. Right. I always say that. When I walked to the radio station the first time, I didn't know what the red button, like I didn't know how to do anything. Nothing. Right. Nothing. The more you know at it, I think the worse you get. That is true.
So Eddie was kind of like a wild animal kind of on the air. And so they bring him over to EEI and they put him with Dale Arnold. And who the hell thought that was a good idea?
No, so I guess originally he was by himself, right? In the afternoons for a while. I'm trying to remember. They paired him with Dale, but I actually think, and if you talk to Jerry, he would tell you like that was his favorite Eddie because those guys hated each other. So they would fight like fucking crazy. They have a commercial, they'd fight to go back on the air, they pretend. But like, Dale was not playful and Eddie just didn't like Dale. And that could work. Friction can work, but you're right. Like it felt, and I think Dale was always sensitive to which way the wind was blowing. So at that point, even when social media was an early start, people like Eddie's old, he doesn't know anything, he's out of touch. Dale would read that and get angry about it and almost weaponize in arguments. And, that thing where it's like, these message boards are saying that Eddie doesn't know any, and that can be obviously the most dangerous thing of all. But listen, they had great success for a while. They didn't have any competition in terms of sports radio, but for a 10-2 show, it was good. But yeah, he had the touchdown twins on, Ron Hobson and Kevin Mannix, and I think a lot of guys, I hope will come forward. The first time I heard Dan on the radio, first time I heard Cafardo on the radio, the first time I heard a lot of these guys on the radio was on Eddie's show on the weekends. And he had guys he loved. He loved horse racing.
Yes.
He loved Vegas. Jerry has an old story about how he and his wife went with Eddie and the fabulous Judy to a Red Fox show in Las Vegas in the early 80s, mid 80s, when Jerry was writing, not even on radio yet. And Jerry just knew him from Sanford and Son. Like they didn't know. And it was the most, Red Fox, a legendary, disgusting comedian. And Eddie was just cracking up. I played basketball against one of Eddie's kids at Linfield. I forget which one it was. He's my age. And I was in 8th grade seeing Eddie sitting on the sideline. To me, it was like seeing, Lobel or seeing Bob Ryan or somebody. I don't know if Eddie was as big as Lobel when I was a kid in Boston, but he's pretty close. He might have been.
Yeah, no, to speak near him on a microphone was freaking surreal. So, Eddie,
I never did it.
At EEI, so Eddie is so real that at EEI, I think he tried to get or was almost in a fist fight with John Dennis. I'm pretty sure he went after Smurless. Eddie's not a big guy.
Yes, he did. He went after Smurless. He went after Dino. I talked to Eddie twice in my life. The first time was when things weren't going well with me and Dino at all. People watching, they might remember, they might not. And I talked to Eddie for about 5 minutes, and he was very nice. He was just like, yeah, the guy's fucking crazy. And I was like, yeah, he's crazy. The second time, I think is it Bill Blumenthal? Is that his name? Who owns the Wilbur? I forget.
Yes.
I was doing the Wilbur show. I did Wilbur like 5 years ago or something. I did a couple of shows there. And the way they brought me out was on the cross. The show was starting. It was starting like 2 or 3 minutes. I was on the cross getting ready to go out. And Blumenthal comes up to me with the phone. He's like, I got a special surprise. Somebody wants to say hi to you. I'm like, Bill, we're about to start the fucking show here. I'm like, hello. He's like, hi, how are you? It was Eddie. He's like, yeah, I just wanted to tell you, Bill wanted me to talk to you. I really like what congratulations. And I was like, this is fucking surreal. But yeah, so that was the only time I never, by the time I got going, he was long gone. He went to EI he was at EI for a long time. They went over to 1510 for a couple of years when they were really spending a lot of money. And, he had a great guys like him and Glenn, Jerry, John, these are 20, 25 year, 30-year runs on the radio. That's like never going to happen again too. Big time radio.
No, but before I let you go, Kirk, one of the things that it's my own opinion and I've seen online for all over the place is that Eddie is a big father-sons thing. Like a
Yep.
lot of kids,
Yo, for sure.
Certainly with me, I would have loved my dad to have met Eddie. It would have been everything. But it's like it makes me miss my dad. Like Eddie being gone, because it was a bonding thing. Like with you, probably Celtics games and maybe Eddie.
Right. Well, at least your dad doesn't have to see what you've become.
I know.
So that's good.
That's
so it's a win.
Yes.
But yeah, no, there was a lot. Like I said, like when you say Eddie to me, I picture myself in the back seat of a car driving back from the Cape, looking from the back seat to the highway and like waiting for the commercial to end so I can, because, radio for me at that point in my life, we're talking what time, like 84. And by the way, I used to call it in a couple of times as a kid. I would really want to talk about, I was on a couple of times. I want to talk about, Glenn Hoffman, or I want to talk about, Bill Walton, why they, that kind of thing. And it lets you on, and they might laugh at you and hang up on you. But like radio at that point in my life was top 40, Casey Kasem, the songs of the day, and then you were done. There was nothing in my life like this. Nothing. Like it was a different, the first time I heard Stern was like that. Also the first time I heard the Car Talk guys was kind of like that. Yeah. Where it's like, they're just talking. Like there's no, everything else was, hey, it's Lauren and Wally, 106.7, at 8:42, we give away tickets to this, and coming up, the Thompson twins, and it was fine. I like those guys, but Eddie was like a different, and Mark and Jim were great. Mark and Jim were great, sort of straight men, serious, but also in on the joke, sidekicks to that. But yeah, I mean, like unbelievable run, and raised a ton of money for charity, I wish he had, somehow stuck around. His kids continue to do it. Yeah. But I wish he had stuck around in some form or fashion, but it's tough. I'll give him credit. He just kind of went away. You didn't see him, he wasn't going on the radio. He wasn't, he tweeted for a bit years ago. I don't know if you remember or not, but he kind of gave up on that. He just kind of went away, which is, I think, a good thing.
Well, kind of a bittersweet thing is that till the end, he was working events at the Phantom Gourmet, like taking tickets, him and Judy and stuff, and it was like just a labor of love for him. Yeah,
I think he loved it, and he loved what he loved, man. I mean, if you ask guys our age to describe Eddie Andelman, you'll get Hot Dog Safari, you'll get. Remember the first Patriots Super Bowl run, Jambalaya was his big thing, and it like took off. It was like this. He loved things where the callers would call and say that or something. He loved Brady. Dale loved Bledsoe, and they fought about that. Like, and Dale's the kind of guy I work with Dale a lot, where like you and I, the way my show was, or the way that, like, you could fight about that, motherfuck each other for 20 minutes and laugh about during the commercial. Dale could not do that. He is not capable. He would always take it like, I remember arguing with him, and he'd leave and go to the bathroom or something, come back, and he'd be mad at you. I'm like, well, Dale, I don't think Jim Wright should be in the Hall of Fame day. I don't know what you want me to say. Like, it made you feel better, you can go in, But Eddie,
Robert Gordon Orr.
Right. But Eddie was, there's no comparison to Eddie. I can't even think of somebody. It's weird in a weird way. Like, he almost didn't influence anybody because he was so weird. But at the same time, like, maybe he did. I don't know. I never thought about Eddie when I was doing radio, but like, he was the first voice. If you said to me, what's the first radio voice, I would say Maddie and Eddie are the first two voices I can remember as a kid. So
for you, he was a guy who was defending Bird constantly too. And you were a Bird guy, obviously. I remember him saying when Jordan came into the league, he's a jumper. Jumpers don't last.
Yeah. He doesn't have it takes caller. He loved that. And he had, like I said, he had his guys, he had his guests, and he was like not afraid to embrace wrestling either, where everyone else was like, what the fuck is this guy talking about? Like, what? Like, what? But, I mean, I would say Glenn, but you could easily make a case that Eddie's the most important figure in Boston sports talk radio ever in Boston. Like, I'd be totally fine with that. Like, that he started it. I mean, there was literally nothing. He always says he was the first guy at Radio Row at the Super Bowl. Now, Eddie, I think, could be liberal with the truth sometimes when he was talking about his biography, but he was the. I mean, I bet you'll hear Matt Russo, Francesa, all these guys. They will talk about seeing Eddie at the Super Bowl radio. There'd be 4 people there. There'd be 4 shows there. Now there are 4,000.
Yeah.
So, and he knew it. He was smart, very smart business guy too. Like super savvy guy. And I mean, hard to I was surprised how surprised I was when I saw the news earlier. And I was like, geez, you're right. Like, it is a big, I'm not sure there's even a Boston father and sons comparison like Eddie, but you're exactly right. Like you listen to Eddie with your dad. You listen to Eddie when you did things. You listen to Eddie, driving to and from places. I was Eddie sometimes it's Sunday nights on school nights. He's on late. I would listen to him listen to him at night after I go to bed. He'd be playing on my radio.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, a huge soundtrack to my youth, up there with all of them.
Yeah, maybe you're at Barstool Chicago right now. Maybe there is no Barstool without Eddie Andelman. Like Portnoy said, he's a huge
Well, given the hotel they put me in, I kind of wish that had been the case then, maybe.
Kirk Minihane,
it's a good disaster.
I appreciate it, man. Thanks so much.
Anytime, Tom. Good to see you, buddy.
There he is, Kirk Minihane. Just a couple more things about Eddie before we get to the chat. I met him, I guess 2013. There is some video of him at Boston Herald Radio. It kills me that our soundproofing was nothing, didn't exist. So the sound quality was awful. That's a lesson. You learned, when you build a studio, don't save money for the company, which is what I was trying to do. But one is, he was absolutely devoted to his kids. Like I said to Kirk, that he would always go to everything that he could that the kids were doing and work there and be gregarious and fun. When Dave Andelman, when I was at the Lowell Sun, Dave was writing columns for us. I don't even think Dave wanted to get paid. He just wanted to make sure that his dad got a hard copy of each paper that he's in. It meant that much to him that his dad got a hard copy. And when COVID happened, the U.S. mail was screwed up, so all the copies that I was sending him to Eddie were getting behind. And Dave called me upset. It's like, where's my dad's copies? Like, it meant that much, and it was the COVID U.S. mail, but it meant that much that all the guys, all the boys, their dad meant so much. You could tell as well. I got to know the guys a little bit. Dave more than the other two, Michael and Danny. But they're really great guys. I don't know what people like to bleep on people who do well and kind of self-confident guys. They're all great guys, and because their dad is a great guy. And I'll just say that Eddie was the guy who checked in on me. He was always fun, always he used to take us out to eat. Like nobody would ever charge Eddie to eat anywhere because he was royalty. But he tried to pay regardless, and he was just a good guy. And man, we ate at some great Chinese food restaurants. Eddie knew Chinatown like nobody else. But him and Steve Sweeney used to be in there with Eddie all the time, and I should have had on Sweeney tonight. As a matter of fact, I was just trying to. My original thought was Glenn and Kirk, and then I saw that Bill had Speros, and I thought Bill is a good homegrown guy. He's like the perfect guy. Maybe I'll talk to Sweeney about him as well. But just one of a kind, and I'm serious. Like that. A lot of you guys probably did the same thing. Like it's like you listen to the Sports Huddle with your dad and couldn't believe that they're allowed to do these things. Jim McCarthy, I think maybe time to go home. Like all the production, I was thrilled. Eddie came over to when he came over to the Herald. He said, Tom, I want you to do the following. I want to hear a reverie, and I want to hear the William Tell overture. I want to hear Bugs Bunny say this, and I want to hear these. And he's like telling me this in the phone. And I'm like writing it down. It's like Eddie's creative mind is just going. And I'm like, okay. And I created an open for. I'll try to find the open. And it was a good open, and he liked it because it was nuts. And he was he was having a lot of fun. Just a great guy. I remember one time, he had gambling friends of his took his son out to Vegas when he turned either 18 or 21, and he took him on the town and gave him the night of his life. And the kid they had a good Vegas time. And Eddie was talking to whoever it was, a boxing promoter on Herald Radio about the time he took his son out. The boxing promoter took his son out for the night in Vegas. And he said, yeah, we went to this place and we had some drinks here and this and that. And he said, and Eddie at one point said, kid just turned 18. You can't get him a hookah? That's great. But anyway, it is R.I.P. Eddie Andelman, just one of a kind. And although I have, I'm not exactly a Radio Hall of Fame guy, I tell you, it is winning in your job when Eddie Andelman walks through the door with a crazy idea to have fun. So, yeah, that's an embarrassment of riches right there in its own way. All right, let's go to the chat, shall we? These won't be about Eddie, I don't think. Maybe one will.
Thanks for having your podcast on during dinner time. It was a rare treat to try to have dinner conversation while listening to you chatter away about morons up in Maine and the national whatever and this and that. Who cares?
Was that yesterday? Was that yesterday? I don't remember, Cheswick. Was that? That's a lifetime ago. That would have been Sunday. And it is. My life is chaos. So anytime to fit it in, that is the goal. There is no like, I should do this at 6:30 today. I mean, I think part of it is that Alice has left today for Florida, and we wanted to get our stuff done so we could spend a little time and talk and strategize and fraternize and all that stuff.
This and that. Who cares? Just keep telling Steve to keep punching Graham Plattner, every other Democrat in the state of Maine.
Yes.
And to tell him to focus on Mara Healy and the Democrats here, too, because we need that.
Yeah.
The more press, the better. When I worked at Tony Roma's, a place for ribs, when I was in high school, I think, after about a month of having free onion rings and free ribs to take home after work, I'd start ordering in myself food because you just couldn't stand the food there after a while. You just get so saturated with it, you just don't feel like you want to eat it. So
Cheswick, I know how that is. I've done that too, where it's just like too much of the same thing. Because I'm a glutton, and like I'm like a dog. Like I will eat the same thing forever until I'm sick of it or just feel sick when I see it.
Understand what Colleen was saying. Like, she eats a lot of the specials, but the regular food it becomes boring. And I just wanted to say that down the street from Man Ray, there was a bar called Ground Zero, and it was like a post-apocalyptic punk new wave kind of club. And I remember hanging out there when I was in college. Yeah, those are pretty heady times.
So did Ground Zero? Was it that on that street? Was that street that goes? Was that Center? Like what was? Is that the street that had Western Ave? Is that Western Ave, Western Front? Was that what that was? It became a reggae place. Western Front wasn't afraid to have a shooting or two in the day.
Hey, Billy from Manchester.
Hey, Billy.
Well, this might be the last time I'm calling.
What?
First of all, I tuned into your show only to listen to a Fareed Zakaria simulcast, I guess. I mean, what are we doing? There's no editing. 10 minutes of Fareed, 6 minutes of Bill Maher. I mean, we're going backwards in clips. Like, there's no editing devices anymore. That's number one. Number two is just Tom's too sensitive. The jokes aren't falling with him anymore. He can't take it. I mentioned that he's got 4 guests as a joke, and he immediately goes into, well, ACAST wouldn't allow us to, all this technical BS bullshit about his show. I'm just done. You know what? I'll listen maybe occasionally, but you've lost me. 45 seconds.
4 guests. I don't get. Was that they mean 4 people watching? What did I say about ACAST? I don't remember, Billy. That's a lifetime ago. It was that yesterday's show. Let's see. 4 guests. ACAST was. Oh, I see. That's right. Because there's some. Oh, I was claiming to have some audience because ACAST. Yeah, they do. You're not just allowed to just have them and have spots. That's true. Because we years ago tried that and they were like, no, thanks. We're good. But so that's what that was. The other stuff I don't remember what I was sensitive about, if I was. It's these days are freaking crazy. And right now my kids are holding down the fort downstairs, thankfully, and they're doing a great job because I have not been hassled by anything other than my own technical ineptitude.
I just heard that Eddie Andelman passed away.
Yeah.
It's a sad day. I would listen to him as a kid. He'd been around that long. And, 242 WEEI, go ahead, call.
That's later, too. Come on. What was it? 266-1100. You're next on WHDH.
That's the best impression I can do of him. He's been away so long, but I just remember that he would get into arguments about everything.
Yes.
And I did go to that hot dog safari once at Suffolk Downs.
Yeah.
Man, it was packed. And thank God he did that for cystic fibrosis. So long, Eddie.
Here, man. Well done. Touch of class there, Cheswick.
Hey, Tom, John in the car.
Hey, John.
I just want to give you a little warning about Five Guys before you went. Stephen Merrimack sounds like he's a successful, affluent guy. Maybe doesn't understand how the hoi polloi live. But if you were to go to Five Guys, with Alice and the kids, and you all got burgers or hot dogs, they have very tasty hot dogs there as well. Drinks, fountain drinks, and enough French fries to satisfy your brood of children.
Yeah.
You're conservatively dropping $150 to start.
Oy.
Without a doubt. That many kids, you and Alice. So I just wanted you to be prepared for the financial burden that you will be levied with if you go to Five Guys.
Good to know.
But it is a very tasty burger. Maybe they give away free unshelled peanuts. Maybe fill up the kids on the peanuts and
nice.
Keep the cost down. But just wanted to warn you. Thanks. 118.
Thank you, John. I appreciate that. Unfortunately, we've got a peanut allergy in the group. By the way, MJ Ben, that's Michael Ben, right? Said, you never asked Colleen the most important question. How do you handle a situation where a fat man tosses back 3 Bloody Marys and skips out while his wife pretends there are only 2? How dare you? Woe betide you. Think I am. I have to sit around and take this wanton abuse. Okay. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for everything. Thanks for bearing with me while I fed you echo for the first 20 minutes. I will put product on for the Patreon folks that is unpolluted by my ineptitude. And I appreciate you, Patreon people. Everybody who's not Patreon folks, you can hear such ineptitude yourself live every night if you want to by joining. Thanks so much, everybody. R.I.P. Eddie.